So I grew up really seeing two dynamics. One was on one side was extreme education.
Mm.
Folks that I grew up with and my parents were around were extremely educated. Like I said, doctors, lawyers, engineers, judges. Next door neighbor was a pharmacist, principals, and all this.
Right.
And then on the other side, I saw entrepreneurism. And they were both going at the same time. So here, my father had, was a doctor. He also had a master's in public health from the University of Michigan. But I saw him and his colleagues, his other Black colleagues, lawyers, judges, pharmacists, doctors get together and they built their own building, professional building from the ground up. When I was a little kid, I got to witness that and see them build this building called the Drew Hale Professional Building, named after Dr. Charles Drew.
Mm.
And so education was always important, but I'm seeing this other stuff happen right in front of me.
Everyone, and welcome back again to another exciting episode of the Masters of Business. I'm your host, Brother Bedford, and as always, I'm over the moon, excited. I'm tickled pink, whatever phrase you want to use to express excitement and enthusiasm. I have another powerful conversation on board for you today. And I think the reason I enjoy my conversations is because I'm literally having conversations with people that I know, like, love, and trust. And I know that they're going to deliver value. I know some of the life stories and the intricate details about the journey. So it's always pleasing to me to be able to present to some, introduce to others, some of the best and brightest minds, not only in Black America, but Black people from all over the world. I've been blessed to meet some of the best and the brightest, and to be able to develop relationships with them and then present them to you is really an honor and a privilege for me. So I'm extremely excited today because the brother that I'm about to introduce to you now, we have a history now. We've been knowing each other for some years and presenting on stages, primarily at the Power Networking Conference together. And so again, knowing some of the intricate details, I've seen the growth and the development of his business and the transformations of his business. And so I'm extremely excited to share some of those insights with you today. So without further ado, let me always mind my manners. I want to welcome to the Masters of Business, my man, J.R. Fenwick. How you doing, dear brother?
Man, I'm doing fantastic. I'm doing fantastic. I'm shining because I'm standing next to you. So it's exciting.
Well, this is one of those rare sightings where you got the sun, a couple suns in the sky together at the same time.
That's what I'm talking about. Absolutely.
Man, so thank you for joining me, man. I hope and pray all is going well with you and your family, man. Again, this is a friendship and a brotherhood. So I hope all is going well.
Yeah, everything is going well. And, I want your viewing audience to know what a powerhouse you are and what you're doing. And I appreciate it. And it's like when you call and ask, am I available? I'm like, I'm available. Brother Bedford calls, because again, I know your character, I know what you're doing and the number of people you're helping. So any way I can participate, I enjoy doing it. And as they say, I'm ready to drop it like it's hot.
Yes, sir. Well, and I appreciate that, man. And so, I mean, you have your business that you're part of is it's not only, most people start businesses and it's probably in an arena that they stumbled into, and there's probably not a lot of fanfare around it, but you, fortunately, your passion is in an arena that everybody wants to know about. Everybody wants to know something about the stock market, especially as we become more knowledgeable and aware of talking about creating and building wealth and generational wealth and investing. That those words were missing from the Black lexicon for many, many years, but now everyone is talking about it. And you've been blessed to build a business in this arena, an education and technology company with Flip That Stock, and in addition to that, Hold That Stock. And so I definitely want to talk about those. I have JR's bio. As you can see, it's so long, and this is probably page 1. And so I'll make sure that this is posted for everyone to go and really dig deep into all of the great things that JR has done. So what I want to do, instead of reading the bio, I just want you in your own words, man, to tell us who is JR Fenwick before Flip That Stock, before Hold That Stock, even before the corporate job. You know, what was JR like growing up as a little boy?
If you ask my family, I have 3 brothers and 1 sister, a total of 5 of us. If you ask them, they would say, and my friends would say, he was rambunctious, always into something, a trash talker. Every time I get into sports and things like that, and a big dreamer. Always talking about what I wanted to do, and never believing that I couldn't do it. And so growing up in a family of with 5 kids, I was very blessed and very fortunate. My father was a doctor, mother was a nurse, and we grew up around other people of color who were doctors, nurses, engineers, lawyers, judges, pharmacists. So I grew up really seeing 2 dynamics. One was, on one side, was extreme education. Folks that I grew up with and my parents were around were extremely educated. Like I said, doctors, lawyers, engineers, judges. Next door neighbor was a pharmacist, principals, and all this. And then on the other side, I saw entrepreneurism. And they were both going at the same time. So here, my father had, was a doctor. He also had a master's in public health from the University of Michigan. But I saw him and his colleagues, his other Black colleagues, lawyers, judges, pharmacists, doctors, get together, and they built their own building, professional building from the ground up. When I was a little kid, I got to witness that and see them build this building called the Drew Hale Professional Building, named after Dr. Charles Drew. And so education was always important, but I'm seeing this other stuff happen right in front of me. And I'm seeing how my father was his own boss, and just the professionalism he had, but yet the freedom he had. It just had a big impact on me. And so I grew up really not thinking there were any boundaries. I really didn't know that there were boundaries, to be honest with you, until I started going to college and seeing other people from around the country and around the world, and realizing, man, everybody didn't grow up like this. So, but once you get a taste of no boundaries, you can't like pull it back, and then there's all these boundaries around you. Now, it's just not my mindset. Never has been and never will be. And so, I grew up in Ohio, went to grade school and high school there, and then I went on to Hampton University. My parents took us around to a lot of different historically Black universities. My father's and mother were from Washington, D.C. And so I wanted to go to Hampton. I went there. And here's where the story gets a little interesting. My father encouraged me to get a nursing pre-med degree. And I was like, well, the way this all came about, one day I asked my mother, who was a nurse, how much you made. And I can't even remember. But I was like, dang, we're rich, right? And I said, I can do that. I wasn't thinking about what a nurse does. I was just thinking about the money she made. So she told my father, and my father was like, you should get this nursing pre-med degree because it's a very versatile degree. You can use it for many different things, and it can catapult you into medical school, dental school, whatever. So I did. To be honest, it's not really a degree I wanted to get, but I'm glad I got it because it made so much sense. And I used that, and I graduated from Hampton University. I went on to work in a hospital in Washington, D.C. But it wasn't my calling to go into medical school or dental school. So I left and ended up going into pharmaceutical sales,
Mm-hmm.
um, where they showered us with company cars, expense accounts, laptops, cell phones. And I was in my early 20s. I was like 21.
Right.
And next thing you know, I'm making almost 50 grand. This is 30 years ago
Right.
as a 21-year-old with all this stuff. And I was like, man, this is heaven on earth. Until Brother Bedford, about 3 years after being there, I really started calculating what I was generating for them and what they were paying me.
Right.
And for lack of a better phrase, I was being pimped. And so I look at, I'm bringing in millions, you're paying me this, but I'm bringing millions in. Not only am I bringing millions in, what a pharmaceutical sales rep does is go to doctors and teach them about the medications.
Right.
And there are medications that I helped launch almost 30 years ago that are still being sold today. I was on the launch team.
Wow.
I was on a launch team for 6 different products that went on to be billion-dollar products.
Wow.
And if you ask me how much residual income I get from them, I would have to give you a big fat 0.
Wow.
And so I started learning this and having the entrepreneurial spirit that I've always had. I started taking my bonus checks and building out little businesses that were around my passions. Mm. And the first one was music. I built a recording studio because I'd been playing guitar since about age 7. And I always wanted really to be a professional musician. Mm. So I started building this recording studio and on the side. And as time passed, I started making more money off of my studio and other little things that I was building than I was off of my job, right, as pharmaceutical sales rep. So now it became a tug of war. Do I go out on territory or do I stay in my studio and make this money? And eventually I had to make a decision and I ended up quitting that. Eventually my salary rose up to 6 figures and I quit and I haven't looked back since. Wow. And now I have a tag on my head, right on my forehead. I don't know if you can see it. It says unemployable.
No matter what they say or do, right?
No matter what they say, no matter what they come with, you can't put a price on just getting up every morning and being free.
That's right.
And creating your own destiny. A lot of people can't handle that. They're just like, it's too much pressure. I need that paycheck every 2 weeks. But I knew I could be my own boss and make 6 figures and more and millions if I applied myself. Like I never viewed anybody being better than me. I'm like, they're not smarter than me. They just know some things I don't know.
Right.
And so that's a long answer to your short question.
No, that's a great, because I mean, you kind of you've laid the seeds for many questions now that I want to ask you.
Okay.
First, what was the degree that you wanted to get?
To tell you the truth, back then, your parents kind of told you, they kind of told us, this is what you're going to do.
Right.
And you're going to do it. It was really like a dictatorship. There wasn't like really, well, what do you?
No democracy in the house.
Right. There was no democracy. So consequently, my father had a belief. He said, you're going to go into a profession that if that profession ends, the world ends. Mm. And here are your choices. Engineering, teaching, law, nursing. I think those were the choices that he gave.
All right.
So being that I wanted to be a professional musician, he's like, you can go up to New York and go to LA or something. I'm not paying for that. Right. So I had to pick and that's what I picked. Well, that's what I was given. Right. Pretty much.
Yeah, your multiple choices, right?
Yeah, my multiple choice. And let's put it this way, he highly encouraged me to go that route.
Right.
And when my father highly encourages something, you just do it.
Right.
So yeah, so that's the route I went.
So how did your father and the family respond after, now that you're in there and you decided not to continue in the medical profession? How did they respond then? How did that go down?
Well, this is really a funny story. So I'm working at a major hospital in downtown Washington, D.C. So after I graduated, I went home for a week, and then I ended up moving to Washington, D.C., where I wanted to live. And so I'm working, and it's not what I wanted to do.
Right.
And so I ended up just quitting.
Mm.
I had no plans. I just said, I can't do this.
Mm-hmm.
But I did tell everybody before I left, within a year, you're going to see me on TV.
Right.
And this story is kind of twisty and wild. And within 1 year to the exact date, I was performing on Showtime at the Apollo.
Right.
And so
And by the way, is that video on YouTube somewhere?
it is on YouTube. Yeah.
Yeah. So everybody, if you want to see JR and on Showtime at the Apollo, make sure you go to YouTube and Google him, JR at Showtime at the Apollo.
We'll come up, and Sinbad was the host. Incredible, incredible experience.
Man.
But to answer your question, I think, my mother had called me one day, and she said, listen, my god sister had just become manager at a big pharmaceutical company, and they were hiring nationwide for something called pharmaceutical sales rep. I had never even heard of a pharmaceutical sales rep. Here's what I heard her say. You get a company car, you work from home, and the starting salary was like $40,000. Now I'm 21 years old, and this is 30 some years ago.
Right.
So all I said was, I can do that. Now they didn't have internet, cell phones had just come out back then, right? So I'm going to the library doing all this research on this pharmaceutical company because I said, I'm getting this job. I am getting this job. So went out, bought a suit. I went in, and there were thousands of people who applied for these jobs, and I ended up they hired 400 and something, and I ended up ranking number 2.
Wow.
And they called me up and made me, the offer, and like, out of everybody, you ranked number 2. And to be honest with you, I was pissed off. I'm like, why wasn't I ranked number 1? So, but that's how I ended up getting into pharmaceutical sales. It was through my mother calling me and telling me about it. And when I went into pharmaceutical sales, one thing I will say is they gave incredible training.
Okay.
They spent literally $120,000 training us before we were allowed to even go out and speak to a doctor in a territory. They give you a territory, and then you go out every day and see 8 doctors. But they gave us all this training. And my mindset is, once you get the training, even if you leave, they can't take that back out of your mind.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I really learned so much through this training, how to professionally present to someone, how to put on a presentation, how to analyze data, how to seek out new business, how to promote products, how to do a new product launch. All of that came into play through this corporate training.
Yeah, so that's just invaluable there. And sometimes, because I do want you to continue on this line, but 2 points real quick. One, I'm a big advocate for when people say they have to get a job. And I believe it was probably in Robert Kiyosaki's book. I think I may have even read it there many years ago, where to get a job, don't get a job for the paycheck, you get a job to learn, right?
Right.
So you're getting the job for education. And then you kind of speak to this with your experience with the pharmaceutical company, is that here you are, you go in, you just heard, I guess your mom's voice was probably like, in the Peanuts gang, wah, 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 wah. You ain't hear nothing. Company car, 40 grand. You're like, I'm sold, right? So, but you entered into that, probably not even thinking about the education and the training, the lifelong education that you're going to receive from. But here you are, all of those skills that you accumulated, I'm sure has helped you in your entrepreneurial journey.
No question. It's so funny you say that, because Brother Bedford, you're right. She was talking about this, and all I heard, company car. I was like, what? And I can work from home, and I go out on the territory, and nobody's watching me all day. And that's all I kept thinking. It's like, I get laser focused when I want something, right? So I'm like, oh, I can get that. But yeah, and here's I remember this like it was yesterday, when they made me the offer, and we went to training in Richmond, Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
Ended up staying at a place called the Residence Inn, which most people know about now, but back then it was brand spanking new.
Right.
So we had our own little rooms, right? We check in, Brother Bedford. I got my own little room, like a little apartment. We had a maid who would come by and clean the room. We had somebody who would come by and stock our refrigerators. We had somebody who would pick up our laundry and take it. We had a swimming pool, and I'm 21.
Right.
And then one day they gathered us up in a van. This is the true story. They gathered us up in this big, long white van,
Right.
drove us to a car dealership, dropped us off, and there was a man standing there with a what do you call that? One of the boards that has paper on. I can't say clipboard.
Clipboard. Okay.
And you walk up, and he show you this, and he say, "What color car do you want? Here's the 4 choices. You pick this one," and all we did was sign our name, and they gave us the keys, and we drove off in this brand new car. I'm like, this don't make any sense. This makes no sense, right? But I took it anyway.
Right.
It made no sense, but I took it anyway. And so, yeah, but along the way, as I started seeing, really, I'm making them a fortune, I started saying, this is an opportunity for me to use all the resources. I'm out on the territory all day. I can run errands here. I can stop in here. I can research a business here. I've got tools like printers and fax machines that I can use to my benefit, right? These trainings that I'm learning, I can use to my benefit to build my own company. Because here's what I realized, and here's what I want your listening audience to think about. Every company outside of the government was started by somebody, right? So I used to work for Merck Pharmaceuticals, which was the largest pharmaceutical company in the world at the time, and still one of the largest. But it was started by George W. Merck and his family.
Right.
And now employs tens of thousands of people around the world. Look at Apple. It was started in a garage. Microsoft started in a garage. Amazon started in a small office in Seattle. Sometimes we don't realize people started these things that turned into behemoths. And so my mindset was, why not me?
Right.
Why not me? And your audience should be saying that, why not me?
Right.
Sometimes it seems so big, so it never was daunting to me. It's like, I deserve this. I'm supposed to have this, but got to put the work in and the time in to get it.
Yeah, no, that's a great story, man. So a couple points. Again, if you're working a job, because I used to, when you're in your youth, and I interviewed a brother, Ron Douglas, before, and he had a great point too, because we were talking about people quitting jobs and starting on their entrepreneurial journey. And he made a point, he said, it really depends on where you are in your life. I mean, if you're 19, 20 years old, you don't have a responsibility in the world, no children, no spouse, sure, you can go and pursue your dreams. But if you have responsibilities, families, things like that, you kind of have to ease into it. But the main thing that's consistent is if you are on a job or you have to work, it's important to learn all of the things that you learn, right? The systems and the processes, as you mentioned, fax machines, all of these things that come with the business. You learn that stuff. So when you do make the transition, you know what it takes to at least go in a business. You still don't know how to run a business yet, but at least you know what goes in it, because experience is going to be your best teacher. So that's one point. But the other thing I wanted to ask, and the reason I brought up about your, how did your father take once you made that decision and you quit, but clearly your mother had some input into that, so probably wasn't as dramatic. But the reason I ask, and I want you to speak to this, because a lot of people do not pursue their entrepreneurial dreams because of maybe something that their parents imposed on them, or a direction that they're supposed to, or even a spouse, that it seems kind of, conflicting to say, I'm going to start my business, and they looking at you like you're not, you're crazy to think you're going to do that. So if your father didn't have any pushback on, I still know that you've had enough experience with a lot of your students and clients who may have that type of pull and push with family members or a spouse as it comes to pursuing their dreams. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, there's going to be painful pushback. We call it the PP, painful pushback, because it usually comes from people who you love the most.
Yeah.
Your friends, your spouse, girlfriend, boyfriend, brother, sister, friends. And they're like, man, because even when I left my corporate job, imagine back then how I was perceived when I said, I'm going to quit a 6-figure job that gives me benefits, a company car. And people looked at me like I was crazy. And the black community, they'd be like, boy, you done lost your mind.
Yeah.
So you might as well plan on it. The beautiful thing about what you're doing, Brother Bedford, is when people listen to and watch these interviews, it can help them prepare for what's coming.
Right.
Trust and believe there is 110% chance that somebody's going to say something to hurt your feelings. You got this good job. Why you want to do that? I wouldn't want to be out there in this economy and not be getting a paycheck every 2 weeks. And it starts chipping away.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that you have to do, it's okay. First you have to say, they're not my enemy. They're not against me. They love me. They want the best for me. They're just scared. And you have to say, it wasn't for them.
Right.
But just because it wasn't for them doesn't mean it's not for you. So to be honest with you, I would get upset when people would say that,
Right.
this, that, and the other.
So how did you handle that? How did you, if you're upset, how do you still say that, give them hugs and kisses when you pissed at something that they said?
You told me to keep it real, right?
I want you to keep it. That's why I'm asking. That's why I wanted to know.
I didn't. It pissed me off. I had a chip on my shoulder. I had a chip on my shoulder, my other shoulder, my head, my legs, and everywhere else.
You're just chipped up.
I'm chipped up. And I was like, I'm going to show you.
Right.
I'm going to make you apologize to me.
Mm.
See, because my thing is, why is it that you believe in these other people who did it, but you don't believe I can do it?
Right.
Why? Why is that? So yeah, I had a chip on my shoulder. And here's the funny thing. I love studying, reading about, watching videos and stuff on highly successful people. Mm-hmm. And if you look at most highly successful people, somewhere along the way, they had a chip on their shoulder because somebody said they couldn't do something, or you're not going to make it, or you're not smart enough for this, or whatever. And so I kind of use that as fuel. Like, I wasn't going to let them win. And here's the thing. I wasn't going to let them win over my dreams and my life. This is my life.
Right.
As far as I know, I only have one on this planet. Maybe I'll be reincarnated as a tree or a chair or something.
Right. But they don't get company cars, trees and stuff don't get.
And that's what somebody will say to you too. They'll do something just like that. They'll say, you leave the job, you're not going to have a company car. You're not going to, because when I left, they came got the car, the fax machine, the laptop, the
all
phone,
the luxuries.
All of it. They put it all in the car and they drive away. But here's a novel thought. Maybe I'm just crazy, brother Bedford. Maybe I'm crazy. But I had this mindset I could get all that myself. Isn't that a novel concept?
Yeah. You and me both. We crazy like that.
That's another thing that people say is they tell me all the time, you're crazy, you're wired different. I used to take it as an insult. Now it's such a compliment.
Right.
Because I want to be different. Oh, do they erect statues to normal people?
Right.
I got a statue out here because they're normal, right? They put the statues up to the people who were crazy. The Wright brothers said, we can fly. You're crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Can't fly. I mean, so I'm okay with saying I'm wired different. You're not normal. That's all compliments now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to live a normal life. I want to live an extraordinary life.
Right.
That is based on what I wanted to build out and make of it.
Man, that's beautiful, man. Beautiful story. And I hope that everyone is getting that lesson. And something, when you were talking about it earlier, reminded me of my conversation with the great Kathy Hughes. Mm-hmm. And, when she first started her radio empire, the first station, she was sleeping on the floor with her son cooking on a hot plate. But her mother, she had to start lying to her because her mother would say, come on, baby, why don't you just go and get a good, because she had opportunities to work for government job, and why don't you just go get a good government job? And Kathy Hughes literally had to start lying to her mother, saying, Ma, everything is great. And the reason she was doing that because she knew her mother cared for her, but she
Right.
had to start lying so that she can keep pursuing her dreams of building this radio empire. And look at her today, right? So
The funny story about that is I used to go by, it looked like, literally, it looked like a little rundown hut with a window in front, and it was her radio station. And you could look in the window from H Street in
wow.
DC and see the radio personality. And about a year or so ago, right before COVID, I ended up being a fairly regular guest at a building she now owns in Maryland that's huge. And I would go in there and I was invited to talk about the stock market. But I know where she started years ago and where she was. And on top of that, about 30 years ago, ended up going over to West Africa, Senegal, with her and a group of other folks. And so it's so amazing to look at these pictures from 30 years ago or so, 25, and see where she's gone with that. It's just incredible.
Absolutely. And to be able to chart the journey yourself, right? Because 30 years ago, look at where you were, right? It was a great opportunity, but now look at the companies that you've built and that you're continuously building, which we got to start diving into this now. I mean, so here it is, the pharmaceutical company, you were obviously doing well there, but you still had the bug, right? You still had to go out and do your own thing. You started building your own business. Tell us to start, how did you get into, because you used the term earlier, which I thought was beautiful. You just had these passions. There were several passions that you had, and you started building your businesses around your strengths and around your passions, but then the stock market became a passion. So take us through that journey real quick.
So I'm in pharmaceutical sales, and I start getting these bonus checks, and I start taking my bonus checks and buying studio equipment. Real quick, funny story around that was, and this is a kind of a teaching point to your audience. Go and experience it before you can afford it. Okay. Again, go and experience it before you can afford it. What do I mean by that? I used to go out and test drive cars I can't afford. But just to smell the leather, just to sit in it, it seeps into your brain, it seeps into your inner soul. Then I would cut out a picture and I put it up. Every single picture that I cut out and pasted up, I got, right? So I didn't have the money to build a studio. So I would go up into the music stores and I'd stay up in there hours playing guitars and keyboards and all that. And I became known as the guy who's not going to buy anything. And you're playing stuff, right? But I knew I had this big fat bonus check coming.
Right.
They didn't know it, but I knew it. So I'm in there and I'm reading magazines at night. I'm playing the equipment in their stores and stuff. Finally, I get this big fat bonus check. I cash it, and I have a big knot of money in my pocket. And I go in, and I'm like, to the sales, because somebody helped me. And Brother Bedford, they all shunned me. They all shunned me. Matter of fact, I was the joke. They were like, he ain't buying nothing. Go on over in the corner and play the guitar. You ain't buying nothing.
Right.
Brother Bedford, I took this knot of money out. I can see it like it was yesterday. I threw it on the counter. And I said, could somebody help me, please? And it was like all of them came just, and I was like, no, not you. Remember what you said? Not you. See, that's a chip. That's a chip on the shoulder.
Chip, you can tell.
But brother, you were always cool to me. And let me tell you, it was a good day for him because I bought everything up.
Right. So
I get this studio, and I was planning on making, as they call it, an album back then for myself. Mm-hmm. My younger brother came over one day. He sees all this equipment, and he's like, man, you should open this up and let people come in and record demos. I hadn't even thought about it. So I was like, that's a good idea. So I did. I went up to Howard University. I posted all these flyers around. There's no social media and internet back then. Right. I said, you want to make a demo? Come to my studio. And these people started coming. I was charging $20 an hour, right, off something I built from a passion. Isn't it interesting here, 30 years later, the average American salary is about $19 to $21 an hour. Right. I built something from scratch where I was charging $20 an hour, sitting in a leather chair, pushing buttons, that I learned from scratch,
Right.
right? So the question becomes, well, JR, how did you get in the stock market? So what happened was I was constantly buying equipment, and I saw it was a rare piece of equipment that was hard to find. I finally found it. I think it was in the Baltimore Sun newspaper, because again, the internet wasn't big back then.
Mm-hmm.
I go out to meet this guy to buy the equipment. His name was Jeff. And Jeff's one of the type of people that you meet, you just instantly become friends with. He had a little studio like me. He and his wife owned a hair salon. So I buy the piece of equipment. Jeff and I become the best of friends. He was a guitarist as well. We would hang out. About 2 years after I met him, Brother Bedford, literally out of the clear blue, he said, "Hey, JR, man, you trading the stock market?" I'm like, "Dog, no. I don't know nothing about no stock market stuff. I'm not interested in the stock market." But there was a couple of things that were going on. One, I had left corporate and I put out my book. After I left corporate America, I eventually left, and I wrote a book, How I Quit My $100,000 a Year Job.
Right.
The Washington Post wrote an article about it, a bunch of other newspapers. So I was like, I got my own thing going on here.
Right.
I'm not interested in no stock market. Plus, my best friend from Hampton, when he graduated, was long story short, became a stockbroker. I sent him all this money and lost it.
Right. So you already had a bad experience.
Bad experience. And the key is I didn't know what I was doing. I just sent him the money. And it really was out of his control because in 1987, they had what was called Black Monday, the largest stock market crash to date back then.
Yeah.
So I wasn't hearing it. Jeff was talking all this stock market crap. I'm like, I'm not interested. And then he said something to me that really got me. He said, "Bruh, you can't be no real businessman if you don't know how the stock market works." He used to say, "Everything flows to the stock market, baby. Everything." And I'm like, man, will you just leave it alone? This went on for 2 years. But it was making sense. He was wearing me down, wearing me down, wearing. And I was like, kind of making sense, but I'm still resistant. And I'm like, man, I got this business. And he just hurt your feelings, man. You ever have a friend that just hurts your feelings?
Mm-hmm.
He's like, yeah, you got all that stuff, but you ain't no real business, man. I'm like, but they just wrote about me in the Washington Post. I don't care. You ain't no get in the stock market, then you'll be a real businessman. So finally, Brother Bedford, one day, this is what he did to me. And it's just shameful what this man did to me. We're going to a Super Bowl party, and he's going to meet me, and we're going to ride together to the Super Bowl party. So we were really, really good friends by this point. He comes over, we're talking, we're getting ready to walk out the door. He said, "Hold on," and he had one of those little shoulder bags, and he pulls out 2 big envelopes, puts them on the kitchen table. He says, "Open them," but he didn't tell me what it was.
Mm-hmm.
So I open them, and I'm looking like, we're really good friends, but dude, why are you giving me your bank statement?
Right.
Looking, now, somebody give you a bank statement, you ain't gonna go line by line. You're gonna go right down to that balance.
It's the balance.
Over $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, what? It wasn't his bank statement, it was his stock market portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll never forget, he looked me straight in the face, said, "You want to join me now?" This is after 2 years of a beatdown. Then he does this to me on Super Bowl Sunday. And I'm just like, my mind is gone. We go to the Super Bowl party. I don't remember who played, what the score was. I remember 2 things.
It's womp again, right? All the noise, just womp. You don't hear nothing.
I don't hear nothing. I'm just like, everybody's at the Super Bowl party. They all into it. And it's just like Charlie Brown's teacher. 2 things I remember. There was a big pool table, and it was one of them big box TVs that the game was on.
Right.
And the reason I remember that because I was pacing back and forth at the pool table thinking, I'm gonna learn this stock market thing. Man, I'm gonna learn this stock market thing. So afterwards, I told Jeff, I'm ready, man. So Jeff starts teaching me for a couple of weeks. But remember, he lived about 45 minutes away from me
Right.
in the Baltimore area. So we didn't have internet. All we had was the phone. And he's, in between having clients, because he and his wife own a beauty salon, we talk on the phone. He said, "I got somebody under the dryer right now. We're talking stocks." So I'm getting into it. I open up an account. I still don't really know what I'm doing, but Jeff is teaching me some. And then one night, I'm sorry, this is a true story. This is true. This is how, if you're an entrepreneur and you really start going after what you want, let me tell you what's going to happen. The universe is going to whoop your behind to see how bad you want it. But then all of a sudden, stuff is going to start opening up. Right. Stuff you can't even explain starts happening. And this is where I can't explain this part. I can tell you what happened. Right. One night, about a couple of weeks after Jeff starts teaching me, I can't sleep. I get up about 4 a.m. I make a sandwich. I turn the TV on. I'm watching TV at 4 a.m. What's on at 4 a.m? Infomercials.
Right, right.
Brother Bedford, an infomercial comes on about a stock market seminar that's coming to town, a few days later. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me.
Right.
I'm going to this stock market seminar. So I go to the seminar. They say it's free, but I know they're going to try and sell me something. I'm okay. I just want to learn. So I go to the seminar, and I'll never forget, this guy was standing up there. And when he told his background, I'm like, this dude is not smarter than me. He don't have a nursing pre-med degree from him.
Back to that again, right? Well, he ain't smarter than me. I can do it.
I was like, he knows some stuff I don't know.
Right.
But if I can learn what he knows, boy, it's over. So 20 minutes into his 2-hour presentation, I'm thinking, you can sit down and shut up, because I'm buying everything you got.
Right.
Because everything he was saying, Jeff had already been teaching me, so I knew it was true. Man, I bought it all. $3,000 software program. I had to pay $129 a month to get, the stock quotes that would come into the software program. Kind of like if you have cable TV but no cable. I mean, If you have a TV but no cable coming into it, it's no good.
Right.
So one interesting point that your listening audience has to know. All right, can I just be blunt?
Sure.
If you ain't willing to open your wallet and pay for something and invest in yourself, you are stunting your growth.
Mm-hmm.
You can get there much quicker when you hire somebody who has done it and can just say, boom, take this step, take this step, take this step, take this step. Isn't it interesting? I saw a thing about LeBron James.
Mm-hmm.
That arguably is one of the greatest players of all time, right? Mm-hmm. But when you look at his body, they said he invests over $1 million with a trainer per year to keep him in tip-top shape. Because he knows that's his tool.
Yep.
If our tool is our mind and we're not investing in it, and we don't believe, well, I'll learn this on my own, I'll go it on my own. Well, why is it LeBron needs a trainer? Why is it Michael Jordan had Tim Grover? Why is it Oprah had Maya Angelou? You look at any great person, there's somebody they can point to and say, they were my mentor.
Yeah.
Well, let me take it a step further. The Olympics are kicking off, right, in Japan. Every last one of those athletes going over there has a coach. Yeah. But yet they're the most well-conditioned athletes in the world. Why do they need a coach? Why don't they just go it alone? Because a coach can see some things that they can't see. Sure. A coach may have done it and say, I can show you a quicker, better, faster way to do it, a more effective way to do it. So I opened my wallet back then. And back then, $3,000, that's a lot of money today. It was a whole lot back then. And I paid this money because I was like, I'm investing in myself, and I got to know what this guy knows, because I know he's not smarter than me. I know it. He just knows some things I don't know. But baby, when I learn them, it's on. So I get this course on the stock market. I got Jeff, talking in this ear. Now it's not Charlie Brown. I'm listening. I'm listening to everything, right? I'm following the course to the T, and I start making a little bit of money. And I'm like, man, I can't believe people can make money like this. It just blew my mind. And so I'm still in the learning phase. I'm learning this, I'm learning that. And then the company calls me, the company I bought the software from. They said, how's it going? I said, it's going good. They said, how would you like a personal coach? I said, well, do tell. And they're like, well, we have these coaching programs. Now watch how they did this to me. Our baby coaching program is $4,500. And our elite coaching program is $17,500. Brother Bedford, this was 20 years ago.
Right.
And they explained what it was. So I said, well, I'll take the baby. coaching program, $4,500 for 8 sessions, 8 45-minute sessions. So every Friday from 3 p.m. to 3:45, this guy would call me. There was no internet that we were doing. He sent me a workbook with fill in the blanks.
Mm-hmm.
Sends me this workbook. I'm going through it. I had 8 sessions. That was some of the best money I ever spent in my life.
Right.
I had to pick his brain. Well, what about this? Well, what about that? I'm filling in the blank here, but I don't understand that. Well, and so we went through all this stuff, never once going into the stock market, but I gained so much knowledge. So now I spent $3,000 on the software, $126 a month, $4,500 on him, a couple other thousand on some other stuff. I'm about $10,000 deep into this, and I'm loving it. What's the difference between that and paying $10,000 a semester for college from a teacher who may not even be doing what they're teaching? Right. So these guys are doing it. I'm learning. And then one day, life changed for me. I bought a stock when the stock market first opened up, and it wasn't by design. I just happened to be at the right place at the right time. I bought this stock, and within 6 minutes, it shot up, and my profit was $1,000. I knew the right button to click to get out. I clicked this button, I get out, I made $1,000 in 6 minutes. Now, let me say this to your listening audience. It was not by design. I just had to be in the right place at the right time and know the right buttons to click. But boy, when that happened, and I want you to envision this, it's a true story. I was sitting in my kitchen with a robe on at my kitchen island. And I made $1,000 in 6 minutes clicking some buttons on my laptop. And I'm like, now, wait a minute. They ain't teachers in grade school.
Right.
They ain't teachers in high school. They ain't teachers in college. They didn't even tell me about this in the course I bought, right? So then I was like, man, first I felt guilty, to be honest with you, because I'm like, there are people out here really working. I clicked some buttons and made this. I got over real quick, and then I said, I want to do this again. So I became obsessed with trying to figure out how to do this, which stocks. So I started, I created a spreadsheet, and I had a notebook. And I had a buddy back then who was like a spreadsheet, Excel spreadsheet expert back then, because a lot of people didn't know about it.
Right.
And he taught me, so I started taking notes and building spreadsheets out and all this. And just over time, I just started developing this little system where I could go in the stock market, grab a little $50, $100, $1,000, $500, get out. You're not going to win every time. So then I started learning how to control my losses. Then I started learning how to control my emotions, because there's a lot of emotions in trading, right? And then I just started putting this little system together, and I was like, oh boy, you can't tell me nothing. You can't tell me nothing. I know what's going on in the market, right? And it was so fascinating and so fun and so frustrating at times, because I'm like, dang, why did that happen? But I learned, and this is another teaching point. You got 2 options when you fail. One is to let it beat you down and claim it as a failure. Or 2 is what did I learn from that so that I can do something different next time? So I had a notebook, and I suggest all of your listening audience have a notebook or some note taker app on your phone or whatever. And if something doesn't go right, why didn't it go right? What can I do better? How can I change it? Can I salvage this? Can I salvage where it went wrong and make it better? Or do I have to scrap the whole thing? Sometimes you got to scrap the whole thing and start again, right? But learned so much, and I've been addicted and obsessed ever since then. So that's how I got into the stock market.
Man, this is awesome, and this is good stuff. Two points, because I want you to. Now we can talk about the company, because now you got that fascination. But 2 points. The learning from your mistakes. I mean, that's huge. But really doing it intentionally, the way that you said. I mean, I got my notepad right here as well. So learning from your mistakes. In fact, that's going to be the best way to learn. You're going to make mistakes, but when you can learn from them, it just really explodes your growth and development. And the other point you made, that's pretty consistent with every millionaire, billionaire, thought leader, icon that I've interviewed,
Mhm.
it's always having a mentor, coaching, and investing in yourself. That's if there's something that, if someone asks me, what is the one thing that you've learned from all of these people? It's that they've all invested in themselves and have coaches and mentors.
And
Speak to that now real quick.
it doesn't stop. I still pay.
Yeah, absolutely. It's ongoing.
Ongoing every year. They say if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. You
Right.
want to be in the room with people who are smarter than you, more experienced than you, who've done some things that you can tap into and learn from and grow from, and who will push you, right? Now, this is another thing that's really interesting, Brother Bedford. People respond differently to being pushed.
Mhm.
I don't mind somebody getting in my face.
Right.
I earned, for those who know me, I'm a black belt martial artist in a style called Wei-Chi-Ru. It's an Okinawan Japanese style, very hard style. When I say hard, I mean hard conditioning, body pounding, in your face, trying to make you break, right? And I'm okay with that. If it gets me to my desired goal, I'm
Right.
okay. Not everybody can handle that. So you have to find someone who's a coach and a mentor that you're receptive to. But sometimes they just got to tell you the truth, and you got to be okay with it.
Pretty
No
much
matter,
all the time. You want them telling you the truth all the time. If they lie to you, you're in bad shape.
especially if you're paying them. If you're
Yeah,
paying, they need to
you're
be
in bad shape.
telling you the truth. So yeah, I can't overemphasize that enough. Invest in yourself. Just pay somebody who's done it.
Yeah,
They get you there quicker.
absolutely.
So yeah.
This is good. So now that we're here, because the clock is ticking, flip that stock. So now you've mastered this thing. You're playing with it. What you've decided to formally start a company teaching other people, and that became flipthatstock.com. How did that come about? And give us some intricate details about Flip That Stock.
So Flip That Stock wasn't planned. What happened was,
Like really most of the stuff wasn't, right? You always just stumble into while you go along.
it wasn't planned. But when you go on this journey, it's amazing. You start off here and end up somewhere else. But as long as you love what you're doing, I love what I do, right? And then being able to help other people. But what happened was, here I had all this knowledge and nobody to talk to about it. So if I wanted to go play basketball, I got a whole list of people I could play. If I want to go to dinner or movie, if I had nobody to talk to about the stock market, except for my buddy Jeff, right? And most of the time he's in the salon. So I decided to start telling some of my closest friends about it. They start asking me to teach them, but I didn't have any formal teaching method. And I said, okay, well, I'll start teaching you a little bit here. Well, unbeknownst to me, they start telling people. And so now I get all these people calling and emailing me stuff. We heard about you. Do you teach? And I'm like, I don't have no course, and I don't know if I want to do this. And and so I was talking to my younger brother, and he kind of kicked me off the ledge and said, man, you got to do it. So one day I'm watching my favorite show, Flip That House.
Right.
I'm looking at it, I'm like, I'm doing the same thing they're doing, except I'm doing it with stocks, and it seems to be a little easier in my air-conditioned theater room to click a button and crawl under, the flooring of a house. Now, don't all you real estate people start attacking me because I believe in real estate too. But that's how I came up with the name Flip That Stock, from watching that show. And my goal was to specialize in teaching our people and beginners how the stock market works and how to get started. What is a stock? We basically 7 things. What is a stock? How does the stock market work? How do you open up an account, a special account to buy and sell stocks? How do you find stocks? How do you analyze stocks? How do you properly buy stocks? There's a right and a wrong way to buy stocks.
Right.
You protect yourself after you bought those stocks. And I'll add an 8th one on. How do you have fun doing it?
Right.
And so when I started doing this, I started seeing how many people wanted to learn this. And sadly, how many of our people didn't know anything about the market because their parents didn't talk about it. They said, save, get a good job and save, right? So I wanted to have a leading education and technology company to be able to do that and show people this and show them cutting edge technology, how you can do this from your laptop, from anywhere, as long as you got an internet connection, how you can do this from your smartphone, standing in line at a grocery store if you want. And so that's how Flip That Stock started. And now we have members in almost all 50 states and even up into Canada.
Man.
It's continuing to grow, and we've got a lot of stuff on the horizon. We've got our own social media platform inside of our platform. I'm not talking about Facebook. I'm talking about our own social media platform. We're working on our own trading app, investing and trading platform. I'm getting ready to launch a podcast. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we're lining up. Is very, very exciting.
This is awesome.
The interesting thing for your viewers, it all started with just a thought in my head. A thought in my head. Now we're going into our 8th year. So I want you guys to think about that. Every company that you go to outside of the government was started by somebody.
Right.
Why not you? And you got to decide, are you going to use your life and let it go away and look up and be 80, 90 years old and say, I shoulda, coulda? Or you just going to do it? If you fail, so what?
You're going to learn. You learn from your mistakes. That's what we just said.
Yeah, absolutely.
Man, so look here. How do, and you know, you got to come back because there's so much that we got to unpack. But how do people get involved or get in contact with you for Flip That Stock?
What they can do, they can just go to flipthatstock.com. And we actually have, when you go to flipthatstock.com, we have a free little mini course on there that'll teach you 20 things about the stock market that you need to know to get started successfully. And if you're willing to go to flipthatstock.com and spend an hour to watch that video or the group of videos that we have, sometimes we're changing them around and stuff like that. We live in a microwave society where you got to get everything right then and there. Hey, if you're not willing to sit down and spend 20 minutes, a half hour to watch a video, don't even waste your time.
Right. And wait a minute, this is free though, right? Just let's really back it up a little bit. If you're not willing to spend the time and absorb some free information, you really missing the boat. Matter of fact, you missed everything that we've been talking about for this past hour. It was the want.
And the great thing is, again, I want to commend you on what you're doing, because your listeners and viewers, I know, don't even have that mindset, or they wouldn't even be listening to you and watching.
Right.
Like they may tell a friend or somebody, and so we got to let them know you're going to have to invest some time and you're going to have to invest some money. But this, I guarantee you, when I teach you these 20 things, you're going to know more than 90% of the population on the planet knows, because most people don't know nothing about the market.
Right.
And no free course that I have there, and it'll share with you others. If you like what you heard and you like the way we teach it and you want to continue on with us, there's no obligation. But if you do, it'll show you our other programs that we have, and we'll go from there.
Man, this is awesome. And so, yeah, we got to have you back, because Flip That Stock has morphed into Hold That Stock as well. And we just don't have time to unpack. So we'll unpack Hold That Stock the next time you come back on. So go to flipthatstock.com. JR has a free training for you, 20 things that you need to know about the stock market to get started. It really is more than just a freebie that just gives you some generic information. It really prepares you to go to the next level, right? So make sure you go to flipthatstock.com. So JR, as always, I like to ask my final question. You kind of been touching on it all the way through this, but I just want to ask you directly. We have those budding or newbie entrepreneurs in the space. I want you to what would you tell them, give them some advice to the budding entrepreneur, but then also the seasoned entrepreneur, which is interesting now because we have a lot of people who've been in entrepreneurship and business for a while, but things have happened over the last few years and they have to reinvent themselves and approach things differently. So what advice would you give those two groups of people as we get ready to close out?
Okay, so for the budding entrepreneur, I think the best advice I could give you is to get around other people who are entrepreneurs. get around, go to events like the Power Networking Conference, even if you're brand new, because you have to be around people who are like you. And if you are trying to be an entrepreneur and you're in corporate America or with your job, and all those folks want to move up the corporate ladder or work their job and get their paycheck, every 2 weeks and everything, it's going to be tough, because a negative times a positive, this is a mathematical fact. A negative times a positive is always a negative. Right. You have a positive 1 billion times a negative 1, it's a negative 1. So you got to get around people who are like you, who are positive, who will energize you, who will give you tips, who will give you strategies and things like that. So that's what I would say for the new entrepreneur. Okay. Also have a conviction inside of you that I'm going to get what I want. Mm-hmm. I'm going to get what I want. I'm not going to let somebody stop me from doing it. Failure is just part of the game, period. So those would be my tips. Just a few. There's many more, but just a few that come to the top of it.
No, they're pregnant too, and you'll come back, and they'll come back as well. We kind of want to make this a regular, ongoing thing, and not just every blue moon, because the content it's not just rich and valuable. It's so timely. That's the best part about having these type of relationships, is that the people that I'm trying to expose to our people, this is not outdated information. This is flip that stock today, not 20 years ago. And so once again, man, thank you so much for sharing your time, your wisdom, and the stories, man. And we got to get back into, have you gotten back into your music? You're starting back up. I think you said you were building a studio, right?
I don't know. Well, you might not be able to see this on here. I can't. Well, it's not showing on here, but I'm actually in the studio right now behind me. Okay. And surrounded by equipment and all this. We're building out a new studio now. And I'm launching a new show called One Man and a Guitar. It's going to be a YouTube show where I recreate hits right in front of you, old school hits on the guitar, one man and a guitar, just playing the oldies but goodies that, our generation loves. So that's, and I'm very excited about it.
Yeah, we definitely got to talk some more about that. I mean, just so many things we could talk about. Just think about this, folks, as we get ready to say goodbye. We don't want to hold you too long, but just think about this, is that the business that JR has chosen of flipping stocks, learning how to do that. And of course, he has hold that stock. We talked about that, but just for the purposes of flip that stock, it's providing him the lifestyle to be able to really have time on some dreams and some goals and some passions of his. And you've heard him say that over and over again, just as you've heard me say it over and over again, falling in love and learning how to build a business and a lifestyle around your passions, your talents, your skills, and your gifts. It is so rewarding. So I'm excited to hear you say that. And of course, we want to get back, and then we need to talk about these passions, because you got a few of them that you've built your careers around.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's so much coming, man. There's no limit. There's no limit.
No limit.
No limit. So.
All right, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Make sure you know what, man, I neglected to say this. If you like this, like it, but share it. Make sure you tell a friend, someone who needs to hear this information. Make sure you share the information, and make sure you go to flipthatstock.com, join on with JR, learn what it is that he has to share with you. And we'll see you in the very next episode of the Masters of Business. So once again, thank you, JR, for everything that you share with us today. I appreciate you, dear brother.
All right. Thank you, Brother Bedford. Have a great day.
You too. Talk soon.
Mm-hmm.